Thank you, members. The sitting is now resumed and it's time for questions to Mr Gordon Lyons, the Minister for the Economy. Before we call the first question, I want to inform members that questions number 4 and 13 have been grouped. I call Ms Rachel Woods.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Question number 1.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. My department's Economic Recovery Action Plan continues to help us protect jobs and keep people in employment. As we continue to reopen our economy, protecting jobs is my immediate priority. Members will agree that that is an important employment protection in its own right. Members will be aware that in terms of employment law, my department has, by necessity, prioritised those actions that protect those most immediately affected by the pandemic. To date, that has included making legislation to ensure that family-related leave, redundancy and other statutory payments for employees are based on normal pay rather than furlough pay. My department has also legislated to extend vital health and safety protections to all workers that previously only applied to employees. Looking ahead, my focus is on progressing the parental bereavement leave and pay bill. Members will agree that this will be an important new employment right for parents who sadly suffer the loss of a child or stillbirth. I am aware of commitments made in New Decade, New Approach that relate to employment rights. The unprecedented impact of the COVID crisis has meant it has simply not been possible to progress all of these. While Northern Ireland already has a robust framework of employment rights in place, my department will consider those issues as part of a wider review of employment rights issues in the next mandate.
Ms Rachel Woods for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. But the New Decade, New Approach agreement stated that the Executive should commit to becoming a living wage employer and that the Executive should ban zero-hour contracts and that an Age, Goods and Facilities and Services Bill be introduced to ensure that no worker is discriminated because of their age. So my question to the Minister is, does he agree with me that 17-year-olds doing the same job as a 24-year-old should be paid the same wage? And when can we expect as members to scrutinise the Age, Goods, Facilities and Services Bill that would ensure that no worker is discriminated because of their age?
I certainly understand the points that the member has made, and I hope that she can understand the difficulties that we have had in progressing some of this legislation during this mandate as a result of the huge amount of time that was taken up actually dealing with the crisis and the immediate issues that we faced. In particular, I am aware of the commitments that were made in relation to 0 hours contracts, and as I've said, the huge upset by the pandemic has slowed that down. And although I do recognise that flexibility in the labour market can be a positive benefit for many workers and businesses, there are clearly instances where the misuse of contracts like these can be deeply unfair to workers. So I will, of course, want to give detailed consideration to this matter, but at this stage, any actions to regulate the use of zero-hour contracts could only be taken forward following a public consultation and the approval of any new legislation by the Assembly.
Mr Jerry Carroll.
It's very disappointing to see the lack of legislation coming through in regards to workers' rights from the Minister. Minister, as I understand it, your party colleagues and previous ministers refused to engage directly or meet directly with Nick Ictu, which represents some 250,000 workers here. Will you commit, if you haven't already, to meeting with Nick Ictu to hear what improvements in employment legislation can be brought forward in this mandate and the next mandate?
Well, Mr Speaker, I think I hope certainly the member will recognise that we have not been able to make the progression in some of the employment issues in this mandate that we would have hoped to, again, because of the COVID crisis. I'm always happy for either myself or my officials to meet with those that want to meet with us to discuss potential legislative changes, and if invitations are received, either myself or my officials will be happy to attend.
Ms Gemma Dolan.
Minister, you spoke there about workers on zero-hour contracts, and there's around 11,000 people on zero-hour contracts in the north. with no certainty over their income or their hours. Again, you did say that in New Decade New Approach there was a commitment to this, and you said that to change legislation you'd need a public consultation. Well, I'm progressing the PMB on this, have done the public consultation, so will you give a commitment to support my PMB when it comes to the floor of the Assembly?
Well, Mr Speaker, as I've already said, not only would we need to do our public consultation, but there's other work that would need to be carried out as well. This was a New Decade New Approach commitment. However, I'm of the view that because of the time that was taken up dealing with the COVID pandemic, that it made it difficult for us to progress this. However, I'm sure that this will be at the top of the agenda in the next mandate.
Paula Bradley.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, you touched there earlier about the effects of the pandemic is having on workers. Can I just ask when we'll see a change to the working from home message, because that's certainly having an effect on many workers' mental health, never mind the economic effects in our towns and city centres?
Yes, absolutely, and this is an issue that I have continued to raise with executive colleagues. I believe that it is important that the guidance actually reflects where our businesses are at this moment in time, and I know a lot of businesses are wanting to begin a phased return back to the workplace. I certainly don't believe it's the case that 100% of businesses want to send office staff back 100% of the time. I think that when it comes to office working, hybrid working is something that we will continue to see in place for some time. Although I think productivity has remained high for those that are working from home, I think creativity is damaged when you aren't able to interact with other people in the workplace. And I think it can be particularly difficult as well for those who are starting a job for the first time and having to begin a new job working from home. I think it's a different matter if you're already working for a company. And so it's been impressed upon me by numerous companies that I have met that they would like to see a change to that guidance, and I'm pleased that the Executive on Thursday did agree that a gradual increase in blended working would be reasonable with appropriate mitigations. I think that's where most businesses are at anyway, who are looking for the guidance to be changed. As I've said, they're not wanting everybody to go back all at once, but they want the opportunity to begin that process of bringing people back to the workplace again, and that's something that I certainly support.
Mr Stewart-Dixon.
Principal Deputy Speaker. Minister, what action are you and your department taking to introduce a low pay commission for Northern Ireland?
Well, the member will be aware of the commitments that are found within New Decade New Approach in relation to national minimum wage powers and the potential devolution of those. Of course, minimum wage issues right now are currently a reserved matter, and that's an issue for the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And of course, national minimum wage is currently based is at a UK-wide basis, but it is regularly reviewed. Now, the UK Government have said that their intention is that the national minimum wage rates achieve the target of 60% of median earnings by 2024. We have not yet been able to conduct an assessment of the implications of devolving these powers. However, I think this is an issue that we will want to look at. However, I am encouraged by wage growth in Northern Ireland and the skills and talent of our people that are contributing to the better jobs that are coming into Northern Ireland. But we also need to focus to make sure that everybody is getting the pay that they deserve.
Ms Cara Hunter.
Question 2, please, Minister.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, if you pick up any newspaper, you will see that in Germany and in Poland and in the Republic of Ireland and in the United States of America even, we are seeing a shortage of HGV drivers. Some of those are countries that are still in the European Union. Some of those are countries that have never been in the European Union. So I'd like to ask the member why she is attributing this shortage to Brexit whenever it's happening in countries right across Europe and indeed the world.
Ms Hunter.
I'd like to thank the Minister for questioning me at Question Time. Speaking with representatives on the ground who work with HGV and LGV goods, they've actually raised their concerns through me, so that's why I'm asking this here today on their behalf. Thank you.
I didn't get a question there, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, but I'm certainly happy to outline the situation across Europe. An estimated shortage of 124,000 drivers in Poland, between 45 and 60,000 drivers in Germany, and around 43,000 in France. This is not an issue to do with Brexit. In fact, the one way that Brexit is actually affecting the situation here in Northern Ireland is because we have representations from groups that are saying it's the additional paperwork and the additional hassle that is caused by the protocol, which is causing a lot of people not to want to have to make that journey across the Irish Sea because of the additional burdens that are in place. So if we want to address that issue, addressing the protocol would be helpful, but we have to focus on the fundamental issues as well, and that's largely pay and the working conditions of those that operate within that sector. So if we're wanting to tackle the problem, we have to understand what the problem is in the first place, and that means that we have to focus on the issues that actually matter.
Mr Philip McQuiggan.
Minister, in a letter to the ERA Committee on the 27th of September, you wrote yourself that the Home Office has to date shown no appetite for any relaxation of visa rules. So there's the problem emanating from Brexit. So in light of your own words, Minister, can I ask you if you agree with me that the British Government have no plans to fix this crisis, which isn't just in relation to HGV drivers, but it's a problem affecting a number of industries, particularly our agri-food industry here in the north. So, you know, it's resulting as a result of a hard Brexit immigration policy. So, would you agree with me that the British Government are more caring about that than they are about the economy here in the north of Ireland?
Well, before I call the Minister, I would remind members there's half an hour available for questions. Can we please have questions and not speeches? Minister.
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I think the member fails to understand what I've already said to Ms Hunter, which is that it's a combination of issues that are causing the problems that we are seeing, and I think we need to have all of those addressed in all of the ways in which they've manifested themselves. Speaking to the industry themselves, I think first and foremost what we want to make sure that what we want to see happen is that we improve those working conditions so that it becomes an attractive industry for people to come into in the first place. Yes, absolutely, in terms of wider labour market issues, there needs to be flexibility in the system. That's something I want to see, and myself and the Agriculture Minister have been in correspondence with the Home Secretary in relation to that. But we need to understand that it is, of course, a combination of issues that are causing these problems in the wider labour market. But in particular for HGV, it's those working conditions, and that's what we need to address.
Mr Stephen Dunn.
Principal Deputy Speaker, given that this is indeed a global problem, would the Minister agree that one practical local solution to help address the backlog of HGV driver tests would be to amend the trailer test requirements in line with Great Britain, which would help to free up more examiners to carry out tests rather than small trailer tests, an idea which was unfortunately swiftly dismissed by the Infrastructure Minister just last week?
Yes, I think that is a course of action that we could take and will be one remedy to some of the problems that we are facing. In the year before the pandemic, 2019, around 3,000 HGV tests took place, and in 2020, obviously because of the pandemic, I think it was under 300. So that was a massive reduction in an industry where there were already decreases in the number of drivers coming forward. That affected it. So testing is one part of it. Yes, testing has increased over the last few months, but we're dealing with such a big backlog of people that we're trying to get forward. We need to consider all options, and I would certainly agree with the point that the member has made.
Mr Roy Beggs.
Speaker. Last week at the Infrastructure Committee, a major local haulier indicated that east-west payloads and trailers were only at 50 to 60% of the trailer capacity, and that frequently journeys required an extra overnight stop because of the bureaucracy associated with the protocol. So my question to the Minister is, What assessment has been made of the additional costs to business in Northern Ireland in moving goods from GB? And what is further to that, the additional requirement for extra HGV drivers to meet the demand of the transport industry?
Well, of course, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, any fettering of trade, any additional paperwork, any additional bureaucracy, all leads to a slowing down of that trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So, of course, it's going to be the case that it adds cost. You know, I've spoken with business owners who are having to take on extra employees to deal with mountains of paperwork that they are now having to fill out that prior to the protocol wasn't the case. So, of course, it is going to be the case that costs are increased as a result of the protocol arrangements that are in place. Of course, it makes it more difficult as well for those in the haulage industry as well, and it's wrong for others to dismiss the protocol as not being a problem when it comes to this issue, because it is contributing to it. And of course, it's completely understandable that some people in the industry will say that they're not wanting to have to deal with that, with the extra, as the member has outlined, potential overnight stays. That's why this issue needs to be addressed.
Mr. Jim Allister.
Perhaps the Minister could urge Mr McGuigan to keep up, because on the 25th of September, of course, Her Majesty's Government announced an extra 500 HGV visas for those drivers. My question is any of that allocated to Northern Ireland, or how do we see a ripple effect of that?
Well, Mr. Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, my understanding is that that's done on a UK-wide basis, and there isn't a particular allocation for Northern Ireland.
Mr. Harry Harvey.
Deputy Speaker, and I'll be question 3, Minister, please.
The national minimum wage, including that for apprenticeships, is a reserved matter, with policy responsibility resting with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. The national minimum wage apprenticeship rate does not apply to higher level apprentices. My focus, however, is on growing high-quality apprenticeships, including higher-level apprenticeships that lead to high-quality, well-paid and resilient careers.
Mr. Harvey.
Thank you. Minister, what steps is your department taking to encourage more people into trade apprenticeships? Thank you.
I thank the member. My department has put in place a package of financial support to encourage employers to return apprenticeships from furlough through to successful completion of their framework and to recruit new apprentices, and information on apprenticeship return, retain, result and new apprentice recruitment schemes can be found on nibusinessinfo.co.uk. Employer-led sectoral partnerships operate across various sectors of the economy and are central to the development of the apprenticeship frameworks from level 2 to level 8 to ensure that they meet the current and future needs of industry in Northern Ireland. For example, the Level 3 apprenticeship in IT has recently been expanded to include pathways in cybersecurity and digital forensics to reflect the growing demand for skilled workers in these fields. In addition, my officials continue to work on extending all age criteria to non-economic priority sectors and the development of public sector apprenticeships.
Dr. Kiva Archibald.
Margaret Pre-Bless Concordia, and I thank the Minister for his responses so far. And the Minister will be aware that one of the things impacting on the cost of living is the big increases in energy costs associated mostly but not only with the increase in gas prices, and further price increases are predicted in the near future. Does the Minister agree that we need to see a greater intervention in terms of funding coming from the British Government commensurate with these increases to mitigate against the costs of living for workers, families and businesses?
Well, absolutely. Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, I recognise the impact that these increases, world market increases, are having, not only on businesses in Northern Ireland, but indeed on consumers as well. I am concerned about the impact that this will have, especially as time goes on, and we're certainly in a very uncertain time. I will be meeting later on this week with my counterpart, the Secretary of State for Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy. But there are things, of course, that we can do here as well to help. And the Department for Communities takes the lead on fuel poverty issues, and in my own department we focus on energy efficiency, which is really important and something that we should all be aware of, because using less energy, of course, will contribute to lower energy costs.
Mr John Stewart.
Speaker, I thank the Minister for his answers thus far. I support any call to see additional apprenticeships made and a fair living wage for them as well. Speaking to both businesses and to apprentices currently in the system, there does appear to be a backlog between those that have completed the paper-based educational side of the apprenticeship but aren't able to finish the vocational one due to the impacts of COVID. Are you aware of the issue, and what is being done, Minister, to actually alleviate that backlog? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We are aware of that, and we want to encourage people to take on apprenticeships and to make sure that they are able to complete their training. And the Apprenticeship Return, Retain and Result scheme was developed to reduce the risk of apprentices being made redundant, and in total £3,700 per apprentice is available to employers over 3 incentive payments. The first one is the return element of £500 per furloughed apprentice, then the retain element, a maximum of £2,000 over the course of 4 months, and then a result element, £1,200 for successful full framework achievement of a returned apprentice.
As I said at the start, questions number 4 and 13 have been grouped. I call Ms Pan Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. Question number 4.
Thank you, and with your permission I wish to group questions 4 and 13, and with your permission also I wish to avail of the extra minute to answer this grouping. It has been 8 months since the launch of the Economic Recovery Action Plan, and 6 months since the Executive agreed to provide an additional £287 million to help deliver the action set out in the plan. During this time, we have continued to listen to feedback and work collaboratively with our delivery partners, and thanks to this strong collaborative effort, 40 of the 58 actions that we had planned to do at the time of the launch are now in progress or have been completed. The Holiday at Home Voucher scheme is one of the remaining 18 actions yet to be implemented. The proposal was focused on stimulating demand from residents to holiday at home in support of the local tourism industry. The Economic Recovery Action Plan recognised at the outset the need to adapt to changing economic conditions. The suitability of this intervention is currently being considered in the context of the levels of consumer demand experienced over the summer and the impact of the High Street scheme. The High Street scheme is another key spend local component of the plan, and it is aimed at reorientating people towards our local retailers, hospitality and leisure sectors. The scheme opened to applicants on the 27th of September, and I am delighted with the unprecedented number of people who have already applied. I'm also delighted that the first cards issued in the past week, and this is great news for all of our local businesses who will benefit from the rollout of this scheme. I hope members will agree that significant progress has been made against the actions set out in the Economic Recovery Action Plan, but it's also important that the plan continues to evolve. We have been able to scale our offering of support where the demand and benefit has been high. We've also been able to add new actions to aid the economic recovery journey.
Ms Pam Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. And given how difficult this pandemic has been for many, and that the tourism sector has been one of the hardest hit sectors, could the Minister tell us what what steps the Minister has taken to help the sector move forward?
So the proposed Holiday at Home voucher is just one of a number of steps that we have taken to support the tourism sector and to help it recover from the effects of the pandemic, as set out in the Tourism Recovery Action Plan launched by my predecessor, Diane Dodds. Additional funding has been provided to support Tourism NI and Tourism Ireland for heavyweight marketing campaigns throughout the United Kingdom and Ireland to stimulate demand for short breaks and areas of high-value tourism such as business events, golf and cruise. I have also supported significant funding programmes for a number of sectors across the industry and product and industry development. We're also supporting the tourism and hospitality sector through a range of skills programmes and interventions. These include masterclasses, leadership and management training, skills focus offerings for managers in these important sectors, as well as a new skills intervention programme. All of these training and development actions have been designed in partnership with local hospitality and tourism representatives and business leaders.
Mr Mervyn Story.
And can I thank the Minister for his answers thus far, and also for the work that he has done in ensuring that the issues of concern to us all in our constituencies, particularly in terms of the economic recovery, are addressed. He did make mention in his earlier comments about the changing environment, and obviously we are always subject, as we have heard about the crisis currently in prices for fuel and so on. What flexibility is there within the schemes to ensure that the Department can make response in a way that's meaningful to the economy?
Well, I think the first thing to highlight is that the Recovery Action Plan, we worked on this along with those in the industry to make sure that we were responsive to their needs. And I've just noticed that my predecessor is behind me, and she will know about the work that went in there. Look, the furlough scheme was hugely important to keep people in employment, and we know that has now passed. So we're continuing to work to make sure that people are supported as much as they can. So a number of things have been put into action to support jobs and to improve the skills, and so that people can not only be reskilled but they can be upskilled as well. So the Skills Focus Programme, for example, is offering fully funded upskilling for employees, including those who were furloughed. We also provide other opportunities to help people reskill, change careers and move into new and better job opportunities. And that is why the plan is so important, and why we're working in collaboration with industry and with business leaders and representatives to make sure it is agile and responsive to their needs.
Ms Nicola Brogan.
I got a pre-last and thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, in your answers there, you discussed the holiday at home voucher and that you would consider it again. When it was first announced, there were concerns raised about its delivery through a first come, first served basis, and that it may discriminate on low-income families and those with poor internet connectivity. So have you raised those concerns, or addressed those concerns? Sorry.
Well, look, it's certainly the case that this is not something that we'd be able to give or to offer to everybody in Northern Ireland, as we have with the Spend Local card. I think that it's difficult to find a way in which to give these out other than first come, first served. I don't think, certainly hope not anyway, that someone's background or whether they're in an area of advantage or disadvantage would actually prohibit someone being able to apply anyway.
Mr Mike Nesbitt.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. When does the scheme go live, and what are the exact qualifying criteria?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, we're still working with industry to try and find the optimal time for this to be released. We currently have the Spend Local card in place. We don't think it would be appropriate to bring it in at the same time. So we'll be working with industry to work out when it can come at its and bring the maximum benefit to it. In terms of the eligibility for the scheme, we're currently proposing that the vouchers would be able to be used at the Good to Go, registered accommodation, attractions and experiences.
Mr Andrew Muir.
Thank you very much, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. One of the business sectors that's often been in contact with myself is travel agents. They've been badly affected as a result of the pandemic. What does his department propose to do to assist them in the months ahead?
Yes, certainly, and I've had a number of representatives of that industry be in contact. I think that the Executive had put through a really useful scheme that was administered earlier on this year. I think it would be appropriate to extend that scheme. The First and Deputy First Minister have the details, having previously administered the scheme, and I would certainly be supportive of any proposal that would help them at this time. Tourism was among the first to be impacted and the last to be able to recover, and even more so when we consider the travel agents themselves here in Northern Ireland. So I think it is appropriate that we consider how that extra support can be given to them.
Ms Paula Bradley.
5.
My department's apprenticeship provision, including higher level apprenticeships, is demand-led. Cohort numbers are based on forecasts submitted by training providers. Where demand exceeds the approved numbers, training providers can contact my department to request additional places. To date, any such request has been approved. My department has been working hard to grow apprenticeship provision in line with the needs of our economy. The introduction of this new higher-level apprenticeship in supply chain and logistics delivered by Northern Regional College is testament to this. Another new higher-level apprenticeship in transport and supply chain management has also been approved for delivery by South West College, supporting employers in that locality. And these new higher-level apprenticeships will deliver the relevant skills and provide high-quality career opportunities in an important and growing sector.
5-second supplementary, 10-second response, Minister.
Very quickly, will it be open to those wanting to change careers?
That is certainly something that we hope that we can progress.
Well done. Excellent. That's more like a chop-chop. Well done. We now move on to topical questions, and I call the member for Fermanagh and South Tyrone, Ms Anya Murphy.
Minister, the Fermanagh area continues to suffer from the digital divide and lack of decent broadband is disruptive to workers, businesses and students. Can you outline how many premises have been provided with a full broadband connection through Project Stratum to date?
Unfortunately, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I don't think I have those figures here at this time, but I am delighted that we were able to allocate £165 million to Project Stratum as a result of the Democratic Unionist Party and Conservative Party confidence and supply agreement. However, I will be happy to write to her with the details of the number of properties.
Ms Anya Murphy.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his answer. I am receiving calls from deeply frustrated constituents whose premises will unfortunately miss out on the Project Stratum rollout. In total, 572 eligible premises in Fermanagh and South Tyrone will miss out. That is the highest figure across all constituencies. When will these premises that have been left behind by the project have their own broadband connection improved?
Well, look, I hope the member can understand that I don't have dates that I will be able to give to her today. However, I understand how important this issue is to many people living in rural areas. I understand how it contributes as well to disadvantage. If we want to make sure that people are prepared for the jobs of the future, it's absolutely essential that we have a digital spine in Northern Ireland, that people have digital capability. That's why I've been working with the Minister for Education to actually look at how we can make ICT compulsory at GCSE level, because it's essential that we have those skills among our young people. I recognise, however, it's very, very difficult to build that up as a young person if you don't have the broadband access at home, and my department's doing everything that we can to make sure that we achieve that.
Ms Cara Ferguson.
Speaker, can I ask the Minister for his assessment of the rising cost of energy, and in particular the increase in wholesale gas prices?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, as I've already said, I am very concerned about the increases that we have seen in the cost of energy. That not only has a direct implication for consumers and individuals in Northern Ireland, but it also affects businesses as well. Therefore, it also affects the cost of doing business, and then that's passed on further to the consumer again. I certainly will share the sentiments that have been expressed already across this House about the impacts that will have on families and businesses right across Northern Ireland.
Ms Ferguson for a supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his response, but how do he and his department intend to respond to the rising costs of fossil fuels, including oil, which many people here rely on to heat their homes, and the impact in terms of the costs which are passed on to people within their homes and our businesses?
Yes, absolutely, and the executive can respond in a number of ways. First of all, in my own department, as I've said to other members, we in the Department for the Economy have responsibility for energy efficiency, and I want to make sure that we do all that we can to make sure that as a population and as businesses we're doing everything that we can to conserve our energy and be as efficient as possible. However, the responsibility for fuel poverty rests with the Department for Communities, and whenever I was made aware of the increases that were coming in the costs of gas and electricity, I had raised these issues directly at the Executive with the Minister for Communities, Harry Harvey, and I look forward to seeing what proposals that she can bring forward to help alleviate this problem.
Ms Sinead McLaughlin.
Today's employment stats show 5.9% of working age adults in Derry are on a claimant count register, and 7.6% of the working age men. How many jobs have you announced in Derry this year?
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, the member will be aware of the work that Invest NI does in her constituency. She'll be aware that there is a regional office there as well that is working hard to attract investment. And I have to say, with considerable success, in the last 5 years, the
member has asked her question. The Minister's answer will be heard, and she has a supplementary to come back to the Minister, which I have no doubt that she will. Minister.
I didn't hear what she said anyway, but I will continue. The last 5 years, the assistance per head in the members' council area has been, per head of population, has been £427. That's £427 per head of population. And just for context, that is above Antrim and Newtonabbey, Ards and North Down, Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon, Causeway Coast and Glens, Fermanagh and Omagh, Lisburn and Castlereagh, Mid and East Antrim, Mid Ulster and Uri, Mourne and Down. In fact, there's only one place that has attracted more assistance per head, and that is Belfast. In fact, one of the lowest is actually Mid and East Antrim. So if anybody should be complaining, it's myself. I look forward to the member's supplementary.
Yeah. Well, Minister, you still didn't actually answer my question. I said how many jobs announcements did you make this year? So you didn't actually answer that. But Minister, you announced 1,600 jobs in Belfast this year. Why does the DUP Minister and your previous colleagues constantly neglect the Foyle constituency for jobs and university provision? What is the Minister going to do about the unemployment crisis in my constituency? What are you going to do, and what is your response, and how many jobs have you announced? You're not answering the questions. You're making snide
remarks. The member will resume her seat.
And being arrogant to the people of Foyle who do not deserve it.
That is completely unacceptable behaviour. The member has asked no fewer than 5 or 6 questions. When a member is asked to resume their seat, they resume their seat. The Minister can answer whichever of the questions he chooses from the vast catalogue that were provided. Minister.
Well, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I do take exception to the fact that I've made any snide remark. I have quite simply set out the situation, which is that there has been an incredible amount of investment in her constituency, second only to Belfast in terms of council area. And by the way, it's not the DUP or any DUP minister that decides where jobs go. Investors do that. And as you can see, we have provided the assistance there. And I would suggest that the member, perhaps her approach isn't helping very much, and she might want to work with others in addressing this issue.
Now, via remote connection, I call up the member for Foyle, Mr Mark Durkin. Mr Durkin, if you want to ask your question.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister give an update on his department's consideration of the business case for a support scheme for the coach and private tour industry as set out in his department's Tourism Recovery Action Plan?
Well, of course, Mr Speaker, when it comes to the coach industry, that is a question that's best addressed to the Minister for Infrastructure as the Minister responsible.
Mr Durkin for a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. The industry is referred to specifically in the Department for Economy's Tourism Recovery Action Plan, hence why I have asked the Minister this question. Previously, the DFI Minister has had to step in to give support to this industry, and it's my understanding that the DFI Minister is currently awaiting a response from the Economy Minister as to what his department's plans are now. If I could ask the Minister if he intends to respond to the Infrastructure Minister, and if he could do so quickly so the industry can get clarity and the industry can get the support that it requires.
Mr Speaker, it's certainly the case that the Minister for Infrastructure had, as the member has set out, provided this support in the past, and as a result I think she'll be best placed to do that again. She has the details and the data, and I think would be best placed to deliver. I hope that answer is helpful to the member, but I certainly appreciate his tone and approach, which I think is a lot more conducive to business than his constituency colleague who came before.
Mr Harry Harvey.
Principal Deputy Speaker. Minister, maybe you could tell us what else your plans are and what you're doing for tourism recovery at present. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the Tourism Action Plan has been very well received by the industry, but I think first and foremost what we need to do is continue to see an easing of the restrictions that we still have in place, because they are certainly creating a drag. And I spent yesterday with Tourism Ireland, and they were very good to set up a meeting with tour operators, and I was able to hear firsthand about the impact that the restrictions are continuing to have, and on confidence in particular of tourists, not just within the UK but wider afield as well. So I think the first thing that we can do is make sure that we do as much as we can to restore that confidence in Northern Ireland.
Mr Harvey.
Principal Deputy Speaker, and going forward, Minister, I'm sure you have lots of plans for future engagement with the tourism sector.
Yes, absolutely. I think if you look at the successes of the department over the last number of months, the key to that has been the collaboration with the sector. So whether it was the 10X economic strategy, we had fantastic collaboration with industry, and that has created a really successful document. It is the same with the energy strategy and with the Tourism Recovery Action Plan. So I take that collaboration very, very seriously, and I want to listen to what people are saying. I think it's one of the benefits that we have here in Northern Ireland of being a smaller place. Gives us the ability to be agile and to respond to the needs of the sector. So it's really important that we are responsive in that way and listen to their concerns. And in particular, it was useful for me to hear yesterday about the emerging markets that we are seeing coming to Northern Ireland, in particular from the Middle East. And so it's working with those partners. We can see the emerging trends so that we can best respond as a government to that.
Mr Patsy McGlone.
Thanks very much, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker. Could I ask the Minister, just specifically in regard to the Spend Local prepaid card, is he aware of any technical difficulties being experienced at the payment terminals, with the software being used in the payment terminals? Are you aware of any of those difficulties, Minister?
Mr Speaker, there has been a number of very isolated incidences of people not being able to use their card due to the business. They're largely larger multinationals who are registered in GB, and there has been a coding issue with the card. However, that has been a very small number, and we have found a fix to that. So I'm absolutely delighted with the success of the scheme so far. I can confirm that as of yesterday, 161,000 cards have now been delivered. Another 50,000 are ready to be shipped, and I can confirm to the Chamber I have no special privileges, but I have been able to get my Spend Local card. It is a little bit smaller than the one that I was going around with earlier in the summertime, but it's great that we're going to have these cards delivered right across Northern Ireland to be spent in local independent retailers and in hospitality and in entertainment and leisure and other services. Over 1.2 million people have now applied. Over 1 million people have been verified. So I think that's good news for businesses right across Northern Ireland that suffered so much during the lockdown.
Mr McClone.
Yes, and I thank the Minister for that. Just to get back to the making sure the software on these terminals are being updated, could you maybe just advise what facility there is within the department if businesses require additional information in order to be able to access those updates, whatever that's required?
So these changes will be done automatically. It's not an issue with the card terminals, but rather the coding issue. However, as always, if there are any issues or concerns that people have in relation to anything to do with the High Street scheme, there is a helpline and email address that concern. If you have concerns, that you can contact, and your concerns will be addressed.
Just time for one question from Mrs. Diane Dodds.
Minister, you'll be well aware that Game of Thrones is opening a new exhibition and centre just outside Banbridge. Will you commit to having Tourism NI work with the local council and our local representatives to ensure that the wider Upper Ban and in particular Banbridge area benefits from that attraction?
Well, absolutely. Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, and again with my engagement through Tourism Ireland yesterday, I was able to see from tour operators the real enthusiasm that there is from them and from visitors to experience the Game of Thrones exhibition. It's going to be a fantastic attraction for Northern Ireland, which I'm sure will bring many, many extra people that wouldn't otherwise have come. And I'm sure when they see the attraction of the Game of Thrones exhibition, they will also want to see all that Banbridge has to offer, which the Minister very kindly took me around during the summer. So I'll be more than happy to make sure that we can support Banbridge and all of Upper Ban as much as we can.
Thank you, members. That concludes questions to the Economy Minister. If members take their ease for a few moments for a change at the top table, the next item on the agenda is an urgent question to the First Minister.